Off the back of yet another title win, Manchester United fans were excited for a special season in 2007-08. But no one could have imagined just how insane that season would be, with Sir Alex Ferguson's men unleashing a masterclass of football that would go on to be talked about as one of the greatest teams in Premier League history, giving us possibly the best season of Cristiano Ronaldo's career, and that's because Fergie's vision of how the game was to be played began to evolve at this time, utilising a hybrid of 4-4-2 and 4-3-3, along with fast and powerful attacks, leaving the opponents in the dust on the counter, triggered by their patient high press, resulting in some of the best goals in the club's entire catalogue. Defensively, United employed a 2-2-4-2 in the build-up, Rio and Vidic with the backline's core, with Van der Sar behind them as a sweeper keeper. Play then started from the back, using width to create space before threading the ball centrally or through the flanks. During attacking phases, they transitioned into a 2-3-5 shape, frequently overloading the wings with Patrice Evra and Wes Brown as Gary Neville's replacement, pushing high up the field. Then on one side of the pitch, United would draw in the defenders before springing a long pass or quick switch of play to the wide forwards on the flank to run into the space they had created. This was effectively the whole philosophy of this new Fergie side. Work harder, work smarter, and work faster than the opposition. Force them to perform at a level that they're not capable of. But in spite of all this, the season kicked off in disappointment. At Old Trafford, United pushed against Reading with all they had, but the ball refused to go in. It ended 0-0, and if that wasn't bad enough, they lost Wayne Rooney to injury. Yet it only got worse. Away at Portsmouth, Paul Scholes gave them an early lead, helped by new signing Carlos Tevez. In spite of this, Portsmouth got one back, and then in a moment of lost composure, Cristiano Ronaldo was sent off for a headbutt, earning himself a 3-game ban. Thus, it was a draw that felt much more like 2 points lost than 1 point gained. And so these were not ideal circumstances to be going into the Manchester derby with, regardless of the fact that City was still far from the team they are today. Furthermore, Lady Luck was against United that day, as a deflected shot off Vidic put the hosts up, and despite United's efforts including a miss from 1 or 2 yards out from Tevez, that was it. 3 games, 0 wins, 17th place. A start that felt simply impossible for the reigning champions. Thus, it would come as no surprise that both pundits and fans alike started asking questions. Was this the end? Was United's dominance done for? Are the players good enough? Is Fergie finished? Well, despite not being pretty by any means, United got their first dub of the season against Tottenham in their next game with a wonder goal from Nani, because, well, of course they did. Lads, it's Tottenham. Regardless, just when they thought things might get easier, United's old captain and legend Roy Keane returned to Old Trafford managing Sunderland. The match looked set to end in disappointment until, in the dying moments, Louis Saha bagged one in, giving United the dub. Yet, despite the small sense of relief that came with that, it was still clear that this team hadn't found its spark. Something still wasn't right, and the next few games only continued to prove that, with narrow wins and few goals. It wasn't what the great United teams the world were used to are meant to be, as against Everton it took yet another late goal, this time from Vidic, to secure the points. In fact, all these close, low-scoring games found the Red Devils being referred to as 1-0 United, a team getting by solely through scraping victories whilst leaving the fans worried at the same time. In fact, it was such a big thing that Ronaldo had to come out publicly and address the situation.
And maybe it's not the best Manchester United in the moment, but the most important is to win. And I think the best is coming.
And yes, the best was still to come. But first, Chelsea arrived in town, wounded after Jose Mourinho's departure. Thus, United saw a chance. Tevez broke through just before half-time, scoring his first goal for the club. Then, with the game nearly done, Louis Saha converted a penalty, marking the first time United had scored more than a single goal all season. It was a hard-earned victory that seemed to breathe new life into the squad. Then next, they found themselves in Birmingham, where Ronaldo scored his first league goal of the season to secure another tight 1-0 win. Once again, the defence was rock solid, only conceding 2 goals in 8 games. But the attack? Well, that was still struggling with just 7 goals scored. Luckily, all that changed against Wigan, as after a goalless first half, United finally exploded into action during the second. Tevez opened the scoring, Ronaldo struck twice, with Rooney also finding the net, ending the game 4-0. It was the first real sign that United was starting to cook. From there, the momentum picked up. Away at Aston Villa, they conceded early, but responded with 3 goals before half-time. Even after a missed penalty, they sealed the game 4-1, likewise against Middlesbrough with Rooney and Tevez running the show, as well as yet another wonder strike by Nani. He even whipped out his iconic celebration despite the manager's concern of it causing injury. I mean, seriously, despite all these insane players, 8-year-old me fell in love with football because of the kind of things that Nani would do. But hey, the bottom line was that goals continued as United scored another 4, this time away to Dynamo Kiev in the Champions League. And so before they knew it, for the first time in 100 years, they had scored 4 or more goals in 4 consecutive games. It was a warning to any rivals or pundits who believed that the Manchester United era had come to an end. Rather, it was the beginning of a new one, and no better game to try and prove that than against Arsenal, a matchup that looked like a season-defining showdown. United held the lead late into the game thanks to an own goal by Gallas and a brilliant strike by Ronaldo, but in injury time Gallas redeemed himself, snatching a draw for Arsenal and robbing United of the win. It was a big blow, but they bounced back, with Ronaldo scoring twice to defeat Blackburn in the next game, and so everything seemed to be in place. That was until they stumbled away to Bolton, losing 1-0, their first defeat there in nearly 3 decades. Gerard Piqué was at fault that day, with Fergie not trusting the youngster again after that, agreeing a subsequent move to Barcelona. But although this loss stung, United refused to let it derail them after finding their form. Thus, December brought a resurgence that showcased their class, determination, and a squad ready to fight for every point left. With 5 straight wins, United stormed into the festive period looking like every bit of champions in the making, starting with a convincing 2-0 win over Fulham. Cristiano Ronaldo, already turning this season into his personal highlight reel, is not just Manchester's main man, but the entire league and world's, scored twice to put the game to bed. It was the kind of dominant performance expected from a title contending team, and it set the tone for what was to come. Against Derby County, Ryan Giggs provided a historic moment, scoring his 100th league goal in a 4-1 victory. United, meanwhile, continued their relentless march up the table. But then came Anfield. This, of course, is never just a game. It's a battle for pride, history, and in years gone by, titles. However, with the first half coming to an end, United looked like second best. Had the pressure gotten to them? Well, enter Carlos Tevez. Totally against the run of play with just a couple minutes left before half-time, the Argentine, who had become a vital cog in Fergie's machine, delivered the decisive blow with a scrappy but priceless goal. From there, United's defence, as they so often had done that season, held firm under the pressure of Anfield's roaring crowd, securing a huge 1-0 win, leaving them just 1 point behind league leaders Arsenal. Nonetheless, Everton visited Old Trafford just days later, and once again it was Ronaldo who made the difference, bagging a brace. And so by now he alone felt unstoppable, but together United was still second. That would be until a very festive away day in Sunderland, where the Red Devils came away victorious following a resounding 4-0 win, as United took full advantage of Arsenal's slip-up at Portsmouth to leapfrog them into first place. But football is a funny old sport. Despite United cooking, the final game of the year took them to Upton Park, where they faced West Ham. It was Carlos Tevez' first return to his old club, and emotions ran high. However, as per, Ronaldo gave United an early lead and seemed to have set them up for another dub. But then a very rare occurrence in football happened. He missed a penalty. And it wouldn't be the last one that season either. Regardless, this miss proved costly, as in the second half, Anton Ferdinand and Matthew Upson struck to turn the game on its head, meaning United ended 2007 on a sour note, made worse by the fact that they were now 2 points behind Arsenal. As for the start of 2008, well, it brought mixed fortunes for United as they fought to reclaim their top spot. Carlos Tevez kicked off the new year with a winning goal and a 1-0 victory over Birmingham, but Old Trafford's quiet atmosphere frustrated Fergie, who sidelined by a bag fan likened it to a funeral. Luckily, things looked up the following week, with Rooney and Ronaldo securing a 2-0 win over Villa in the FA Cup to kick off their tournament run there. Then, in even better news, a week later Arsenal slipped up, drawing 1-1 with Birmingham, with United taking full advantage against Newcastle. Ronaldo's brilliant free kick opened the floodgates, with the Portuguese winger completing his first Premier League hat-trick. Tevez also added 2 more, and even Ferdinand got in on the score sheet in a simply crazy 6-0 win, followed up by yet another FA Cup win, this time against Spurs. But next, United faced Reading, haunted by the memories of their opening day draw. And well, for much of that match, it seemed like history was bound to repeat itself. But Wayne Rooney broke the deadlock, with Ronaldo adding a second late on to secure a 2-0 win. Ronaldo's magic continued at home against Portsmouth, where his now infamous free kick led United to another 2-0 win, netting his 19th league goal of the season already. In February, however, cracks began to appear. At White Hart Lane, Dimitar Berbatov handed Tottenham an early lead, as United narrowly escaped with a 1-1 draw after Tevez's last gasp equaliser. As well as this, Arsenal's victory that weekend restored their 2-point lead at the top of the table. February also marked a somber milestone, the 50th anniversary of the Munich air disaster. Thus, a memorable Manchester derby was played. United donned retro kits, yet City spoiled the moment, scoring twice in the first half. And despite a late goal from Michael Carrick, United lost 2-1, extending Arsenal's lead to 5 points. And so, at this point, how in God's name could this team possibly be considered one of the Premier League's greatest of all time? Well, United turned up in their next game, beating Arsenal 4-0 in the FA Cup. Then, after a successful Champions League group stage, United found themselves in the last 16 facing off against French opposition in Lyon, with Tevez's late goal securing a draw. At St James Park, they annihilated Newcastle yet again, this time 5-1, with Rooney and Ronaldo each scoring twice, whilst Louis Saha added the 5th. Meanwhile, Arsenal's draw with Birmingham meant that United cut their lead to just 3 points, not to mention a tasty advantage on goal difference now. This momentum was then carried into a 3-0 win at Fulham. Arsenal, on the other hand, slipped up yet again, salvaging a draw with a late goal against Villa. Thus, the gap at the top grew tighter, with just a single point separating them. However, this wasn't just a 2-horse race anymore. Chelsea also found themselves clawing their way into the conversation week by week. But back in the Champions League, United got the job done and progressed into the next round, defeating Lyon. Up next though was the FA Cup, this time United against Portsmouth. Should they win, United would have been blessed with the semi-final and final either against West Brom, Barnsley or Cardiff. Because of this, the possibility of another treble was certainly still on the cards. But then, disaster. The match quickly turned against Manchester United when the referee ignored a clear penalty in the 7th minute on Ronaldo. Nevertheless, United dominated the first half. They pressed on in the second, but their luck didn't improve. Michael Carrick's shot was blocked on the line, whilst Patrice Evra struck the post. However, with just 12 minutes left, Portsmouth launched a counter-attack as Milan Barros was brought down in the box by Thomas Kuszczak, who received a red card. This left the Red Devils without a keeper as Rio Ferdinand stepped in to face the penalty. He dived the right way, but failed to make the save as Portsmouth then took the lead. And from there, United failed to respond, with not only their FA Cup dream ending, but more heartbreakingly, their treble dreams as well. And so it was imperative that United got something in the next few games in order to build on their momentum and send an important message to any title rivals. Unfortunately, it was against relegation-threatened Derby County. And you see, the bottom dwellers often frustrate United. They knew that any point against the Red Devils could be a difference maker in their season, and so they would play like their careers depended on it more often than not. Thus, despite over 60% possession and 19 shots, it took a vital late goal from Ronaldo to scrape a 1-0 win. Luckily, Arsenal's run of 4 consecutive draws allowed United to reclaim the lead on goal difference now. Then, just days later, in a rescheduled clash against Bolton, Ronaldo's brace secured a 2-0 win, further solidifying his position as the best in the world. Nevertheless, form could be forgotten for this next game, as against Liverpool, there is no such thing. In spite of this, Wes Brown's header broke the deadlock, whilst Mascherano's dismissal further gave United control. Ronaldo and Nani then also chipped in with goals, resulting in a surprisingly comfortable 3-0 win. The drama wasn't over yet though, as hours later Chelsea defeated Arsenal 2-1, flipping the table once again. United now sat 5 points clear of Chelsea, with Arsenal trailing by 6. Finally, it was the Red Devils league to lose heading into spring, and they were determined to not fall off. And so, in late March against Aston Villa, Cristiano Ronaldo once again stole the show with an audacious backheel goal to open the scoring. Then, Wayne Rooney added 2 more, set up by Ronaldo, resulting in an easy 4-0 win, their 6th in a row. United faced Roma next, again with Rooney and Ronaldo leading the way for a 2-0 win. It was a standout performance where Fergie's tactical adjustments were the key. Ronaldo played as a false 9, with Rooney on the left and Ji-sung Park on the right, taking advantage of his work rate and discipline. Unfortunately, the mood shifted just a week later in a snow-covered clash at Middlesbrough, where despite another Ronaldo goal early on, Boro's Alphonso Alves turned the match on its head with 2 clinical strikes. A late equaliser from Rooney did salvage a point, but it now meant the gap at the top shrank as Chelsea continued to close in. As for Arsenal, well, their hopes for a title win came down to their next game against United. You see, United were just off the back of securing their semi-final spot in the Champions League with a 1-0 win against Roma in the second leg. In spite of this, the visitors drew the first blood, albeit controversially, as Emmanuel Adebayor handled the ball into the net. But with Ronaldo converting a penalty after a Gallas handball, United were back. Then an Owen Hargreaves winner late on sealed the 3 points. What was even better is that Chelsea's shocking draw with Wigan the following day meant that Fergie's squad had a vital 5-point cushion. But nothing in this title race came easy. Against Blackburn, United found themselves trailing to a Rocky Santa Cruz goal, with only Carlos Tevez' late equaliser rescuing a point, allowing Chelsea's win over Everton to close the gap to 3 points, setting up a huge game at Stamford Bridge to decide who had the upper hand heading into the final weeks of the Premier League. What's more is that with the important Champions League semi-final coming up, Fergie felt forced into fielding a rotated team. As a result, Chelsea's Michael Ballack struck just before half-time, but a rare defensive mistake from Ricardo Carvalho allowed Rooney to level the score. But then, with the tension rising, Ballack bagged the winner with a penalty following a Carrick handball. It was a game that meant, once more, the title race was now neck and neck, with United leading only on goal difference. Thus, the quest for silverware came down to just 2 teams, Chelsea and Manchester United, something which would become very familiar in the Champions League as well. But first, United had to face off against Barcelona. Both teams entered the semi-final first leg with identical records: 8 wins, 2 draws, 18 goals scored, and only 5 conceded. But just 3 minutes in, Manchester United won a penalty, only for Ronaldo to hit the post. This miss seemed to spark Barcelona into action, who dominated possession and controlled the game. In spite of this, United's defence held firm. Carrick even came close to scoring, however, the game ended 0-0. Nonetheless, back at Old Trafford, United faced West Ham in their final home game of the season. Ronaldo, putting his penalty miss behind him, delivered once again, scoring his 29th and 30th league goals to put the match beyond doubt early on. But a red card for Nani soured the occasion despite the 4-1 win. The team had a chance to put a smile on every United fan's face though, with the return leg against Barca in the Champions League. As a result, Old Trafford roared with emotion, even more so following Scholes' Scholes' iconic wonder strike in the 14th minute to give them the lead. And so despite Barcelona once again dominating possession, they still couldn't break through United's solid defence. Thus this win set a Champions League record of 12 consecutive home victories and booked United's spot in their third European Cup final. Who against? Well, of course it had to be Chelsea. However, with one final game left in the league, the stage was set for a final day decider between the two first. United travelled to Wigan knowing that they needed a win to claim the title, whilst Chelsea hosted Bolton. Ronaldo opened the scoring with a clinical penalty before Ryan Giggs, fittingly on his record-tying 758th appearance for the club, sealed the victory. Thus, United secured their 10th Premier League title and finished 2 points clear of Chelsea. Furthermore, Ronaldo's 31 goals earned him the Golden Boot, with United's goal difference of plus 58 setting a new Premier League record at the time. In spite of this, the season wasn't over yet. They still had a chance to turn this season from a good one to a great one. It was a chance for Chelsea to try and get revenge, and an opportunity for United to make history. Thus, Moscow awaited. It began with the Red Devils dominating the first half, taking the lead in the 26th minute through a now iconic Cristiano Ronaldo header. But just before half time, Chelsea equalised when Frank Lampard pounced on a deflected ball and a Van der Sar slip to score. The second half though was more balanced, sending the match into extra time. But despite the occasion building up towards Didier Drogba's red card for slapping Nemanja Vidic, that moment is rarely remembered. Slipped. Thus, with sudden death up next, Ryan Giggs buried his pen before Van der Sar saved Nicolas Anelka's, securing his team their third European trophy. And so whilst this season is so often attributed to the brilliance of that front three of the ever so clinical Carlos Tevez, the selfless Wayne Rooney, and of course Cristiano Ronaldo, who produced a possibly career best campaign, it's worth remembering that the core of this success goes deeper, with the likes of Wes Brown filling in the void left by Gary Neville, and then the likes of Ji-sung Park or Three Lung Park, along with Owen Hargreaves, Nani, Anderson. Honestly, you could pick any player from that season and find a reason as to why they were important. But of course, with a staggering 42 goals in all competitions, it's no surprise that Ronaldo finished that year going on to win his first of many Ballon d'Ors. Now, if you want to learn about every Ballon d'Or winner in history, including Cristiano Ronaldo, then you're probably going to want to click this video on your screen right now.